Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I am doing a Studio Ghibli inspired fan art of a onigiri collection. Now, when I was traveling in Japan a couple years ago, I absolutely just fell in love with the Japanese food, in particular the onigiri, which is such a versatile and handy food. I started eating them from local stalls and also picked some up from their local convenience store, and they were ultra convenient and there was just so many flavors to choose from. I was so excited every time I got a chance to try one. So for this particular piece, it's inspired by the collection of all the different onigiris that I had a chance to try when I was in Japan. Some are sweet, some are savory, and I just love the idea of it. And I also want to incorporate my love for the Japanese animation Studio Ghibli and Totoro. So I'm gonna do a series of roughly around 4 times 3, I guess 12 different onigiri pieces. Let's see what I get from this art time lapse, and I'll show you what how it turns out at the end. So starting off, I'm just sketching out all of the onigiris, which are these triangular rice pieces. They're almost like sushi, but they're just in rectangular pieces. Some have fillings inside, and then some have seaweed that's wrapped around them. So some of them have fish rolls. Some have egg inside, some use peas, corn, some have roasted. So I had a lot of options and flavors to choose from for this onigiri collection that I'm painting. And here I started off by just doing the base rice pieces and then deciding on what condiments I want to add for each piece. And I knew that each of them, I wanted them to be slightly unique and different. So I think a majority of the time for this piece was researching the different onigiri pieces and then what flavors I want to add. I want to have a fair balance of different colors and different styles for this piece, so it's not all the same style. So what you'll learn as you're doing a lot of art piece during your artist journey is that the majority of your time when you're doing artwork, as you kind of progress throughout your journey, is that majority of the time is actually spent researching and figuring out what you want to draw, how you want to conceptualize it before you actually put pen or paintbrush to paper. And that will save you a lot of time and frustration during the painting process. If you have a clear idea for execution, it will make the process a lot easier and a lot faster and very seamless. And I think it's really helpful for me to get into the flow of painting. When I talk about flow of painting, it's when you get into that vibe, that zone where you just kind of autopilot and you just lose total track of time when you're painting. That's the flow state that I'm talking about. And I find that sometimes that flow state interrupts itself when I'm researching on what style of onigiri I want to draw, or have to research into characters, or how the model will look, how the light will glare. Kind of interrupts the painting process. So what I like to do is do a fair amount of research exactly into the details and what I want to paint, so that when I'm painting, I just paint the whole way. I don't stop in between, and that way I don't interrupt that quote unquote flow state and have this continuous stream of creativity without interruptions. I think this applies not necessarily just to artwork. It can apply to cooking, or just doing regular work at home, homework. Sometimes when you just do it all one go, once you're on the roll with a project or activity, it's a lot easier to keep going rather than have many interruptions in between and trying to kind of reorientate yourself halfway through and then do it again. It's just, I don't like that interruption. So that's a tip I would recommend for artists that we don't often talk about. We talk about materials that we use, or the technique that we use for how to get a really smooth lines, but there are other little neats and tricks to kind of get you into the creative flow. And that's one thing that I want to share with you. Here you can see I am midway through the piece. I'm actually quite lucky in that onigiris are white in general because they're made out of rice, so I don't have to paint the entire rice piece. However, I would like to add a little bit of detail and shadowing so that it makes the piece a little bit more 3D rather than just something really flat. That's something I would recommend, especially when you're drawing characters or you're drawing objects that are white. Keep track of like where the light's coming from so you can add shadow to it. Just makes the painting a little bit more interesting, just like the next level up if you're able to add like shadows and dimensions and light to the piece. Now, another tip I want to talk about is when you're painting with gouache specifically, it's nice to layer on painting the artwork one layer at a time, especially if you're trying to get these darker colors. You're gonna find that darks will dry a little bit lighter and lights colors will dry a little bit darker, and that's okay. So you just have to be really patient with it. So here I'm doing the seaweed piece that's wrapping around the onigiri. It looks a little bit light right now, which is okay. I'm just doing the base coat of it using water to kind of smooth out the edges and push the paint just around the boundaries where it should end. And then once that dries, I actually add on a second layer, and it makes the darker colors a lot darker and stand out a little bit more. It's nice to have that contrast for your artwork, like some dark and some light. Makes the artwork more intriguing for the audience. Next, you can see I'm using the smallest brush that I have to add little grains of rice to the piece. Some grains of rice are complete like oval shape, some are just like half the shape. I use different shades of brown to create dimension for the onigiri. And this is one of the favorite parts that I like when I'm painting, is just using my fine paintbrush and adding on the details. I think that's like a favorite for a lot of artists, just doing the detail artwork, because in the beginning when you're using these broad brushstrokes and you don't see like the actual art piece, the details materializing, is a little bit demoralizing. That's why, at least for me, when I started off drawing, when I used to draw like Sailor Moon or like anime girls, I always want to start off with the face and the eyes, because like that seems like the most interesting part, the part that people focus on. And like what I've learned through my artist journey is like it's good to draw things as a whole as you go through the painting process rather than drawing sections of it. It will make things overall more even. So what I mean by that is, if you're drawing a person, don't just draw the head and leave the body and the legs for later. I usually draw like the outline of the entire body, and I just try to balance everything out evenly as I'm painting. So I do the head, a little bit of the head and a little bit of the legs, and try to always step back and have a look, and it's like, does everything look evenly balanced? And that's something that I didn't really learn until later on in my artist journey. So hopefully some of these tips are helpful as I'm going through my art time lapse, and I show you how I draw some of these pieces and also give some tips along the way. And here you can see that the piece is almost done, just adding on more highlights and a little pop of color for some of these fish rolls as well. I do find that the piece does need a bit more highlight, so I'm using my Sakura Jelly Roll, which is an archival ink pen, to add a little bit more highlight and make some of the pieces stand out a little bit more. So you can see Totoro using his mini hands, holding on to these like seaweeds, covering his belly up. I thought it was an ultra cute idea. Well, that's it for today for this Studio Ghibli inspired fan art of this onigiri collection. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like the content on this video, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for considering. It really does help a lot. Well, that's it for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully I will see you in another video. Take care and stay creative, everyone. Bye for now.